Hey guys, today we are going to start medieval history. But before we jump into history, please make sure that you subscribed. Tonight, we're not in a hurry. Nothing here needs to be memorized, understood deeply, or even fully followed. This isn't a lecture and it isn't a test. It's simply a voice moving slowly through the past, carrying small pieces of history like warm stones in the dark. Before we begin, take a moment to settle. Adjust your position. Let your shoulders drop. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. And wherever you're listening from, whatever time it is for you, know that this moment is shared quietly across the world. The Middle Ages are often imagined as a grim procession of misery. Mud. Disease. Endless labor. And yes, some of that is true. Life was harsh, unpredictable, and frequently short. But within that harshness lived ordinary people with ordinary human needs, relief from pain, moments of joy, curiosity about the unknown, and sometimes just the desire to feel different for a while. When the sun went down and the work finally stopped, medieval people didn't just vanish into the dark. They talked. They drank. They experimented. They trusted the earth around them in ways we rarely do now. There was no sharp line between medicine and magic. No clear boundary between faith and chemistry. If something worked, it was used. And if it didn't kill you immediately, it was often used again. Plants especially were treated with a mixture of reverence and recklessness. Roots, leaves, seeds, and fungi shaped daily life far more than written history tends to admit. For many medieval people, the first altered state they ever experienced came not from intention but from food. Bread was a staple, but it was also dangerous. Rye, in particular, was vulnerable to a fungus now called ergot. Medieval people had no concept of mold toxicity or neurochemistry. They only knew that sometimes, after eating bread, strange things happened. Hands burned as if on fire. Legs convulsed. Visions appeared. Groups of people danced uncontrollably or fell into trances. Entire towns experienced waves of shared madness. To them, this wasn't poisoning. It was punishment, possession, or divine warning. To the body, it was chemistry quietly taking control. Beyond accident, there was intention. Herbal knowledge was everywhere. Passed quietly through families, preserved in monastery gardens, scribbled into books by monks who would never admit how often they tested the recipes themselves. Henbane, for example, was common and feared. In small doses, it soothed pain and encouraged sleep. In larger ones, it dissolved the boundary between thought and reality. Users reported seeing people who weren't there, hearing voices, losing all sense of time. Sometimes it went badly. Very badly. But pain relief in a world without anesthesia was worth the risk. Mandrake was even stranger. Its root often resembled a small human form, which was enough to convince people it contained something alive. Stories spread that it screamed when pulled from the ground, killing anyone who heard it. Whether anyone truly believed this didn't matter. The myth endured. What mattered was that mandrake worked. It sedated. It numbed. It altered consciousness in ways that felt powerful and unexplainable. People slept deeply after mandrake. They dreamed vividly. They woke confused, sometimes changed. Belladonna, deadly nightshade, was beauty and danger wrapped together. A drop in the eyes created wide pupils, considered attractive at the time. The price was blurred vision and occasional hallucinations. Internally, it dulled pain and disrupted the nervous system enough to simulate death-like sleep. It was used in surgeries, rituals, and sometimes in ways no one fully intended. Medieval medicine operated on hope, habit, and bravery more than certainty. Most of these substances weren't taken casually. They were mixed carefully, or carelessly, into wines, broths, or ointments. Alcohol itself was central to medieval life. Beer was safer than water. Children drank it daily. Stronger drinks were for celebration, pain, and forgetfulness. Monks brewed with devotion that bordered on obsession. Brewing was science disguised as faith. Recipes improved. Techniques refined. Intoxication became ritual, routine, and release. Some substances never touched the mouth. Ointments were rubbed onto the skin, often mixed with animal fat to help absorption. Certain plants passed through the skin efficiently, especially in warm areas of the body. This led to sensations of flight, floating, transformation. People believed they left their bodies. They believed they traveled through the night sky. The experiences were convincing enough to become legend. Witches flying on broomsticks didn't begin as metaphor, they began as misunderstood pharmacology. Religion played an unexpected role. Churches filled with incense made from resins like frankincense and myrrh. Burned for spiritual reasons, these substances altered mood subtly but consistently. Combined with fasting, chanting, low oxygen, and exhaustion, they created fertile ground for visions. Monks saw angels. Pilgrims felt overwhelming emotion. Saints described lights and voices. The brain, gently deprived and overstimulated, did what it often does, it created meaning. Beyond Europe, other cultures approached intoxication with more structure. In parts of the Islamic world, hashish was consumed intentionally, discussed openly, and sometimes criticized, but rarely misunderstood. Scholars wrote about its effects. Mystics used it to aid contemplation. While bans came and went, the knowledge remained clear-eyed and documented. Compared to Europe's accidental hallucinations and fearful interpretations, this was almost clinical. Every culture found its own way to soften reality. None of this was about escape in the modern sense. It was about survival. Pain was constant. Anxiety unnamed. Sleep unreliable. These substances, whether brewed, eaten, burned, or rubbed onto the skin, offered moments of relief. Small islands of altered perception where life felt lighter or at least different. As the centuries passed, knowledge shifted. Some plants were banned. Others forgotten. Alcohol remained. Coffee would eventually arrive. Medicine became safer. But the human impulse remained unchanged. The desire to quiet pain. To lift boredom. To feel connected to something larger. To float, even briefly, above the weight of ordinary life. So as you lie here now, listening, breathing, drifting, remember that altered states are not a modern invention. Humans have always experimented gently, and not so gently, with consciousness. Tonight, you don't need herbs or fumes or fermented drinks. All you need is time, a voice, and permission to rest. Let your thoughts slow. Let history blur at the edges. Nothing more is required. The past will wait. Sleep will come when it's ready, and as the night settles a little deeper, it's worth lingering on the quiet details of medieval life that rarely make it into textbooks. The small moments. The ordinary habits that slowly shaped how people felt in their own minds. Because altered states didn't only come from dramatic potions or dangerous plants. Sometimes they came from routine itself. Think of the rhythm of a medieval day. Wake at dawn. Work until the body aches. Eat simple food. Repeat. Without clocks, time moved differently. Days blurred together. Seasons passed slowly. In that environment, anything that shifted perception even slightly felt profound. A strong drink, a scented resin, a bitter herb, these weren't escapes. They were textures added to existence. Sleep itself was different. People didn't sleep 8 uninterrupted hours. They slept in segments. A first sleep. Then waking. Then a second sleep. In that quiet middle space of the night, minds wandered freely. Dreams bled into waking thought. Prayers felt vivid. Shadows moved easily. Add a mild intoxicant, beer, incense, poppy, and the boundary between inner and outer reality grew thin. Many medieval visions likely happened here. Not in grand moments, but in the soft middle hours. A monk waking between prayers. A farmer half asleep near the hearth. A woman lying awake, listening to the wind. When strange thoughts appeared, they were accepted, not dismissed. There was no expectation of mental neutrality. The mind was allowed to wander. Pain was constant. Teeth rotted. Joints stiffened. Injuries healed badly. Herbs that dulled sensation were treasured. Poppy extracts, for example, were used widely. Opium wasn't mysterious, it was practical. It calmed crying infants. Quieted pain. Slowed thought. When mixed into wine, it offered a gentle heaviness that must have felt like mercy. Over time, people learned which combinations worked. Not scientifically, but intuitively. Families had recipes. Villages had traditions. What soothed childbirth? What eased grief? What helped the elderly rest? The line between comfort and danger was negotiated daily. Smell played a bigger role than we often imagine. Medieval towns smelled intense: waste, animals, smoke. Aromatic substances weren't just pleasant, they were grounding. Herbs hung in rooms. Resins burned. Oils applied to skin. Strong smells altered mood, breathing, and awareness. Inhaling something sweet or sharp could instantly shift how a space felt. Calm could follow scent as much as sound. Even festivals carried intoxicating elements. Ale flowed freely. Herbs were added for flavor and effect. People danced until exhaustion blurred thought. Music repeated until rhythm replaced reason. These moments weren't escapes from life, they were release valves. Pressure had to go somewhere. And then there were the times when things went wrong. When doses were misjudged. When bread spoiled badly. When a healer trusted memory more than caution. Medieval records quietly mention people, taken by madness, seized by visions, or behaving unnaturally. These were often framed as moral failures or divine punishment. But beneath the language, the pattern is familiar. The brain overwhelmed. What's striking is not fear, but acceptance. After an episode passed, life resumed. There were no diagnoses. No lasting stigma in many cases. A person could scream at the moon one night and milk goats the next. Memory was fragile. Community absorbed these moments and moved on. Over centuries, this relationship with altered consciousness shaped belief itself. Heaven, hell, angels, demons, all described by people who lived in bodies influenced daily by chemicals they didn't know existed. Their experiences felt real because they were real, to their nervous systems. Faith filled the gap between sensation and explanation. As medicine evolved, some substances were slowly removed. Others were refined. Knowledge narrowed. Safety improved. But something else faded too, the openness to mental states that didn't fit neatly into productivity or clarity. Tonight, as you rest, there's no danger here. No dosage to guess. No potion to prepare. Just breath, time, and imagination. But the same mind is present, the same one humans have always had. Curious. Suggestible. Capable of drifting without effort. If thoughts wander, let them. If images appear, don't chase them. Medieval people didn't analyze every sensation. They allowed experience to pass through them. That permission itself is calming. So stay here a while. There's no rush. Let history continue its slow, even pulse. A world where consciousness was softer, stranger, and sometimes warmly unfocused. And if sleep comes, let it come gently. The past will still be here when you wake. As the hours deepen and the world outside grows quieter, it's worth remembering that medieval nights were truly dark. Not the soft darkness we know now, pierced by streetlights and glowing screens, but a darkness that pressed close, absolute and heavy. Once the candles burned low, imagination filled in the gaps. Sounds carried farther. Thoughts echoed louder. And the mind, untethered from visual certainty, became especially receptive. In those conditions, altered states were easier to slip into. Fatigue alone was enough to change perception. Add a warm drink, a calming herb, or the lingering scent of smoke and resin, and the transition from waking to dreaming became blurred. People didn't resist that blur. They accepted it. Sleep was not conquered, it arrived when it chose. Homes were shared spaces. Families slept close together. Breath, warmth, and sound overlapped. The mind learned to drift despite noise. Or perhaps because of it. Repetition, the crackle of fire, the shifting of bodies, the distant sounds of animals, acted almost like a lullaby. In that setting, a mildly intoxicating drink didn't knock someone out. It softened the edges of awareness. Let thoughts float rather than collide. Even storytelling played a role. Stories were long, winding, and repetitive. Oral traditions repeated key phrases slowly, circling ideas rather than driving toward conclusions. This naturally induced a relaxed mental state. People listening by firelight didn't analyze narratives. They absorbed them. And that absorption itself was calming. Herbal knowledge adjusted to this rhythm. Many remedies were designed not to cure, but to soothe. Something to take the edge off pain. Something to quiet anxiety. Something to help a restless mind stop chasing itself. Medieval healers didn't aim for clarity. They aimed for balance, as they understood it. Some plants were considered warming, others cooling. Not physically, but emotionally. A warming herb might relax muscles and calm fear. A cooling one might sharpen awareness or induce sleep. These ideas weren't scientific in the modern sense, but they came from observation. Trial. Mistake. Survival. Over generations, people learned to trust subtle effects. Not everything needed to be overwhelming. A gentle shift was often enough. Just enough calm to make the night pass more peacefully. Religious practice quietly reinforced this acceptance of altered awareness. Long prayers repeated in rhythm slowed breathing. Chanting synchronized minds. Incense softened the air. Fasting altered metabolism. Together, these practices produced states modern psychology would recognize instantly, but medieval people called them devotion. There was no urgency to explain these experiences. They weren't dissected. They were felt. Meaning came later, if at all. Even fear was different. Strange thoughts didn't immediately signal danger. They signaled possibility. A message. A warning. A mystery. The mind wasn't expected to be silent or neutral. It was expected to speak, sometimes quietly, sometimes in ways no one fully understood. As centuries passed, some of this openness narrowed. Certainty became more valued than experience. Control replaced curiosity. Substances were categorized, regulated, and eventually feared. The unpredictable became unacceptable, but the mind didn't change. It still drifts when allowed. It still responds to rhythm, repetition, softness, and time. Listening to a steady voice in the dark is not so different from listening to a story by firelight. So here, now, there's nothing to manage. No lesson hiding beneath the words. You don't need to stay awake. You don't need to follow every sentence. Let some words pass right through without landing. If your thoughts begin to loop, let them. Loops are natural. Medieval prayers looped. Chants looped. Breath loops. The mind relaxes when patterns return. And if images form, half-dreams, impressions, fragments, there's no need to interpret them. Medieval people often didn't. They simply remembered how they felt. Calm. Uneasy. Comforted. Curious. Tonight is about comfort. Let your breathing slow naturally. There's no special technique required. Just notice that each breath arrives and leaves on its own. Awareness without effort. The past isn't a distant place. It's layered beneath us. Humans have always used stories, substances, sounds, and rituals to ease themselves into rest. Tonight, you're doing the same, with nothing more than time and attention. Stay here as long as you like. Or don't. Sleep has its own plans. The voice will continue. History will keep moving softly. And you can rest that as the night carries on, there's a point where thoughts begin to loosen their grip. They don't disappear, exactly, they just stop asking to be solved. Medieval people lived close to that state almost every evening. Exhaustion was familiar. Silence was rare. Darkness was complete. The mind adapted by softening itself. In that softness, memory behaved differently. A thought could drift in, linger briefly, and drift away without resistance. This wasn't seen as distraction. It was simply how thinking worked when the body was tired and the world demanded less. Today, we might call this state drowsy, hypnagogic, or half asleep. Back then, it was just evening. Daily routines quietly encouraged it. Meals were heavy. Lighting was dim. Work required physical effort rather than mental calculation. When night came, the nervous system naturally slowed. A mild intoxicant didn't disrupt this rhythm, it harmonized with it. It lowered the volume on discomfort. It stretched time gently. People didn't expect sharp focus after sunset. Important decisions were postponed until morning. Night belonged to rest, prayer, conversation, and reflection. This cultural permission to slow down made altered states feel normal rather than alarming. Even children grew up with this expectation. They saw adults drink mild ale, inhale scented smoke, speak slowly by firelight, and drift in and out of attention. There was no stigma attached to fatigue or reverie. These were signs the day had done its work. Dreams, too, were taken seriously, but not clinically. A dream might be meaningful. Or it might simply be a dream. There was no pressure to analyze every image. If a dream lingered emotionally, it mattered. If not, it faded. This gentle relationship with the mind protected people from fear of their own thoughts. When intense experiences happened, strong visions, powerful sensations, they were contextualized within belief systems that gave them meaning rather than panic. A strange night didn't mean something was wrong with you. It meant something had happened. Tomorrow would come anyway. This mindset allowed people to experiment carefully, and sometimes recklessly, without the constant anxiety of self-monitoring. There was trust in the body's ability to return to itself. Often, it did, and when it didn't, the community absorbed the difference. There were eccentric people. Visionaries. Wanderers. Holy fools. Not every deviation was medicalized or punished. Some were simply accepted as part of the landscape of human behavior. As centuries passed, certainty became more valuable. Control replaced tolerance. Minds were expected to perform consistently. Deviations became problems. But even now, in quiet moments like this, the older rhythm returns. You don't have to think clearly. You don't have to stay focused. You don't have to remember any of this. The mind relaxes when it knows nothing is required of it. Notice how words can become sounds rather than meaning. How sentences can blur together gently. Medieval listeners experienced stories this way all the time. Oral storytelling wasn't meant to be consumed actively. It was meant to wash over the listener like warmth. If you're awake, that's fine. If you're drifting, that's fine. There's no correct way to be here. History doesn't demand attention. It doesn't mind being half-heard. It has waited centuries already. So let the voice continue. Let the night do what it always does. Somewhere between wakefulness and sleep, the past and present overlap briefly, quietly, and without effort. And when sleep finally takes you, it won't interrupt anything. It will simply carry the story forward. As the night moves deeper into stillness, the outside world begins to feel very far away. Sounds soften. Even thoughts seem to arrive more slowly, as if they're walking instead of rushing. Medieval nights often felt like this, long, unbroken, and quietly spacious. Without clocks glowing on walls or phones humming nearby, time stretched. People didn't rush sleep. They drifted toward it. Firelight was one of the last things many people saw before resting. Flames rise and fall in a rhythm that gently pulls attention downward. Watching fire is naturally hypnotic. It slows breathing. It narrows focus without effort. When combined with fatigue and the faint warmth of a shared room, it created a state where thoughts thinned out on their own. In those moments, perception softened. Not dramatically, just enough. A sound might seem farther away than it was. A shadow might linger a little longer. Thoughts wandered without direction. No one tried to correct this. It was normal. Expected, even, people trusted their bodies more. If sleep came, it came. If it didn't, they rested anyway. Lying quietly in the dark wasn't seen as failure. It was part of the night's purpose. The body recovered even without sleep, and the mind wandered safely in familiar surroundings. Food and drink contributed to this rhythm. Evening meals were filling. Grain heavy. Warm. Digestion itself encourages drowsiness, and medieval diets leaned into that naturally. Add a mild ale or spiced wine, and the transition from alertness to rest became smoother still. Not unconsciousness. Just easing. Even prayers worked this way. Repeated phrases spoken softly slowed thought. You didn't need to reflect deeply on every word. The repetition itself was enough. It steadied the mind the way slow breathing does. There is something comforting about repetition, especially at night. It reminds the nervous system that nothing urgent is happening. That the world will still be there in the morning. Medieval life relied heavily on this reassurance. Days were uncertain. Nights were meant to be calm. When strange sensations appeared, half-dreams, drifting thoughts, fleeting images, they weren't interrogated. People didn't stare at their own minds searching for explanations. They noticed. Then they let go. That's something we've mostly forgotten how to do. Tonight, you're allowed to remember it. If your thoughts fade in and out, that's fine. If the words begin to blur together, even better. Imagine the quiet of a medieval home at this hour. The fire reduced to embers. Breathing slow and uneven around you. Animals settled. Wind passing outside without urgency. Nothing to respond to. Nothing to prepare for. That sense of safety mattered. Even in difficult lives, there were moments when nothing demanded action. Those moments gave the mind permission to loosen. And here you are now, in your own version of that space. Separate from the day. Separate from expectation. Just listening, drifting, resting. You don't need to keep track of time. You don't need to remember where the story started or where it's going. It isn't really going anywhere. It's simply moving gently forward, like night itself. Words will keep coming. Thoughts may drift away. Sleep may arrive quietly when you're not looking. And that's exactly how it's supposed to happen. The voice remains steady. The night remains open. And rest is allowed. At some point in the night, there's a subtle shift that almost no one notices while it's happening. The body stops holding itself up so actively. Muscles loosen in places you didn't realize were tense. Breathing deepens without instruction. Medieval people didn't name this moment, but they lived inside it often. It was the quiet understanding that nothing more would be asked of them until morning. In a world without alarms or glowing clocks, sleep wasn't something chased. It arrived when the body was ready. Sometimes that took longer. Sometimes shorter. No one worried much about it. Lying awake wasn't a failure. It was simply another state of being, one that could still be restful. Listening without effort came naturally. The crack of settling wood. The distant sound of animals shifting. Wind brushing against walls. These were steady, predictable sounds, and predictability soothes the nervous system. Even in uncertainty, repetition brought calm. The mind responded by softening its grip. Thoughts became less sharp. Ideas didn't need conclusions. One image drifted into another without explanation. This wasn't confusion, it was relaxation. That there's a reason so many historical accounts describe nighttime thoughts differently from daytime ones. The logic of daylight gives way to something gentler at night. Memory loosens. Imagination becomes fluid. Medieval people didn't resist this. They expected it. Sometimes, people would lie awake and simply think, not about problems, but about impressions. A conversation from earlier. A story half remembered. A sound that lingered. Thoughts floated freely, not needing resolution. And if sleep didn't come, rest still happened. The body repaired itself in stillness. The mind slowed just by being allowed to wander quietly. Tonight is no different. If you're still awake, that's perfectly fine. There's nowhere else you need to be. No goal to reach. The voice doesn't require your attention. It doesn't mind fading into the background. You might notice that words begin to feel farther apart. That some sentences slip by without meaning. This is natural. The mind prioritizes rest over comprehension when it feels safe. Medieval homes relied on that feeling of safety. Thick walls. Familiar sounds. Close proximity to others. Even silence was communal. You were rarely truly alone, and that mattered. Here, now, you can borrow that feeling. Even in your own space, separate and quiet, this shared stillness connects you gently to something older and steady. Nothing is about to happen. Nothing needs fixing. Nothing needs attention. The night is doing what it has always done, lowering the volume of the world. Let your thoughts come and go without following them. Let the voice move at its own pace. Let sleep arrive in its own time. And if it doesn't, rest will still be enough. The past settles softly. The present loosens its grip. And the mind drifts exactly as it should. As the night stretches on, the idea of time begins to lose its shape. Minutes no longer feel separate from one another. They blend, soften, and fade into something wider and quieter. Medieval people experienced this often, especially in the hours after midnight, when even animals seemed to pause their movement and the world felt suspended. Without artificial light, the body followed older signals. Melatonin rose naturally. Breathing slowed. Muscles relaxed in waves rather than all at once. Rest was gradual, not forced. The mind wasn't pushed toward sleep, it was gently escorted. There is no pressure to arrive anywhere. The night is long. The voice is steady. Rest is already happening. Stay here as long as you like. Or don't. Either way, you are exactly where you need to be. And when sleep finally settles in, it won't feel dramatic. It will feel like letting go of something you didn't realize you were holding. The words will fade. The night will remain. And rest will take care of the rest. As the night reaches its quietest hours, even the idea of effort seems distant. The body settles deeper into stillness, and the mind no longer feels the need to organize or explain itself. Medieval people lived close to this state often, especially in the hours before dawn, when the world paused between darkness and light. This was a time without expectations. No work began yet. No bells rang. No one asked for attention. The night simply held space. In that stillness, awareness becomes wide but gentle. You might notice the feeling of weight, how the surface beneath you supports your body without asking anything in return. You might notice warmth gathering slowly, or cool air brushing across skin. These sensations don't demand reaction. They're just there. Thoughts move differently now. Instead of forming chains, they appear as brief impressions. A memory without detail. A feeling without a name. They don't stay long. They don't need to. Medieval people didn't worry about making sense of these moments. They didn't label them. They trusted that not everything had to be processed immediately. The mind could wander safely, even loosely. This trust made rest deeper. There's a particular kind of quiet that appears late at night, not total silence, but a softened soundscape. Distant noises feel farther away. Even nearby sounds lose urgency. The nervous system responds by letting go of vigilance. Here, in that same quiet, nothing is approaching. Nothing is waiting. Morning exists somewhere ahead, but it doesn't matter yet. Time stretches comfortably. Breathing becomes slower without intention. Each inhale arrives gently. Each exhale leaves a little more weight behind. Muscles unwind gradually, sometimes in unexpected places, the jaw, the hands, the space around the eyes. If you notice this happening, there's nothing to do. Just allow it. Medieval nights were shaped by patience. People waited for sleep rather than chasing it. They rested even while awake. They accepted that consciousness moves through many shades. You're allowed to do the same. If the voice fades in and out of clarity, that's ideal. If words lose shape, even better. Meaning is optional now. Rhythm is enough. Imagine the slow passage of night air through narrow streets. The sound of a distant animal shifting. The creak of wood cooling. These were familiar companions to rest. Predictable. Reassuring. Your mind recognizes the same signals here. There's no instruction to follow. No task to complete. No awareness you need to maintain. Let the night carry you. Sleep, when it comes, will do so quietly. It won't announce itself. It won't interrupt anything. It will simply take over the space where effort used to be, and if you drift without fully sleeping, that's rest too. The body knows the difference between tension and ease, and you're already leaning toward ease. The voice continues softly. The night remains open. And everything slows, exactly as it should. As the quiet stretches on, awareness becomes something soft and distant, like light seen through fog. Nothing presses for attention anymore. The body has settled into its own rhythm, and the mind follows, not out of effort, but because there is simply nothing else to do. Medieval nights held this quality for hours at a time. Long pauses between events. Long spaces where nothing changed, and that was perfectly acceptable. In those hours, people weren't waiting for sleep as an event. They were already resting. Consciousness thinned gradually, the way mist thins toward morning. Sometimes a thought would appear, gentle and incomplete, then dissolve before it could become anything solid. No one chased it. No one worried that it meant something. The night itself felt protective. Darkness wasn't empty. It was full, layered, steady. It wrapped homes, fields, and forests in the same quiet. Everyone shared it. That shared stillness created safety. Here, now, there is a similar calm. The world outside continues without you, and the world inside is under no obligation to stay sharp. Muscles rest not because they are told to, but because they are allowed to. The jaw softens. The eyes relax behind closed lids. The face lets go of expressions it's been holding all day. Breathing slows on its own. There's nothing to count. Nothing to guide. Each breath simply arrives, pauses briefly, and leaves again, carrying a little more tension with it each time. Thoughts might feel farther away now, as if they're happening in another room. You may hear parts of sentences without following them. That's natural. Meaning isn't required in this space. Sound and rhythm are enough to keep the mind company while it drifts. Medieval people spent many nights like this, half asleep, half aware, drifting in and out without concern. Sleep wasn't a boundary. It was a gradient. You moved across it slowly, sometimes turning back, sometimes going deeper, always without judgment. Even dreams arrived gently. Not as stories at first, but as impressions. Colors. Sensations. Fragments. The mind testing how far it could let go while staying safe. When the body decided it was ready, sleep simply took over. There was no moment to witness it, you don't need to look for that moment now. Let the voice stay in the background. Let it blend with silence. If parts of it fade completely, that's fine. It will still be there when you notice it again. The night doesn't demand awareness. It invites rest. Imagine the slow passage of time in a world without clocks. Hours unnoticed. Darkness uninterrupted. The mind learning that nothing bad happens when it stops paying attention. That lesson is old. The body remembers it even if the day tried to override it. Here, there are no expectations. No performance. No requirement to stay awake or to sleep. Rest is already happening, quietly, steadily, without asking permission. The words continue, soft and even. The night holds everything gently. And you are free to drift, exactly as you are. Nothing more needs to be done, the quiet continues to widen, like a slow breath that never quite ends. There's a softness now in the space around you, as if the edges of the room have gently stepped back to give you more room to rest. Nothing presses close. Nothing interrupts. The night simply remains, steady and patient. In medieval times, this stretch of darkness was familiar territory. People didn't count how long it lasted. They didn't mark it or measure it. Night wasn't something to manage, it was something to move through. Sometimes sleeping, sometimes listening, sometimes just existing quietly while thoughts thinned and loosened. The body understands this instinctively. When there's no demand placed on it, it begins to repair itself in small, subtle ways. Muscles soften another degree. Breathing finds a deeper rhythm. Even the heartbeat seems less noticeable, less insistent. It's there, doing its work without calling attention to itself. The mind, sensing this safety, follows. It stops reaching forward. Stops looking back. It settles into the present moment, which at night is wide and undetailed. Thoughts don't need endings here. They can begin and fade without explanation. If images appear, let them drift. If nothing appears at all, that's fine too. Emptiness isn't a problem. It's a sign of rest beginning to take hold. Medieval people often lay awake without feeling lonely. Darkness connected rather than isolated. Everyone shared it. Somewhere nearby, others were breathing, sleeping, shifting gently in their own rest. Even alone, you were never entirely separate from the night itself. That same sense exists here. You don't need to imagine it strongly. Just knowing it is enough. The rhythm of this moment doesn't change quickly. That's intentional. Sudden changes wake the mind. Slow continuity lets it slip downward naturally. The voice remains steady, not asking for focus, not offering surprises. Words may begin to feel like texture rather than meaning. Sound rather than sentences. This is the mind choosing rest over analysis. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. There is no need to correct it. The night is generous with time. There's plenty of it. Enough for sleep. Enough for drifting. Enough for quiet awareness if that's what comes. Nothing is wasted here. Imagine a medieval home just before dawn. The fire long reduced to embers. The air cool but calm. Everyone wrapped in stillness, not yet part of the day and no longer part of the evening. This in-between space is where rest deepens most naturally. You're here now, in your own version of that space. Let the body sink where it wants to sink. Let the mind go where it wants to go. There's no path to follow. The night holds everything evenly. The voice continues softly. And rest unfolds on its own terms. You don't have to notice when sleep arrives. It will simply be there. The night remains unbroken, smooth and steady, like a calm sea with no shoreline in sight. There is no sense of moving forward or backward now, only of being held gently in the present moment. Time no longer asks to be tracked. It passes quietly, doing its work in the background. In earlier centuries, this long stretch of night was not something to fear or fill. It was an expected companion. People rested within it the way one rests within warmth. There was an understanding that not every moment needed purpose. Stillness itself was enough. The body responds when it senses this permission. Tension that was once invisible slowly releases. The shoulders settle. The muscles around the eyes soften. Even thoughts about the day begin to lose detail, as if they're being viewed from farther and farther away. If there are gaps between words now, let them be. Silence is not empty. It's part of rest. Medieval nights were full of it, thick, comforting quiet that wrapped around thoughts and dulled their edges. Awareness becomes simpler here. Instead of noticing many things, you might notice just one. Or none at all. Both are signs that the mind is letting go of its usual habits. Breathing continues at its own pace. There's no need to deepen it or slow it intentionally. The body already understands how to sleep. It has done this countless times before. Sometimes there's a brief sense of falling, or floating, or tipping gently inward. This is normal. It's the nervous system shifting from alertness toward deeper rest. There is nothing to catch yourself from. Nothing to hold on to. Medieval sleepers experienced this often. With no alarms waiting, no deadlines pressing, the mind could drift without fear of missing something. Sleep was not guarded. It was welcomed when it arrived. You are allowed the same ease now. The voice doesn't need to be followed. It can fade, return, blur, or disappear entirely for a while. It will keep its place without needing anything from you. If thoughts return briefly, greet them gently and let them pass again. There's no need to engage. Night thoughts dissolve quickly when they aren't fed attention. The quiet deepens. The body rests more fully. The mind loosens its grip. Nothing is required. Nothing is expected. And within this softness, rest continues to unfold, quietly, naturally, just as it always has. The darkness feels fuller now, not heavier, just more complete. It's the kind of night that seems to stretch gently in every direction, without edges, without urgency. The body recognizes this depth instinctively and responds by letting go of what it no longer needs to hold. Long ago, people trusted this process. They didn't interfere with it. They didn't try to guide it or improve it. They allowed rest to come in layers, one after another, each softer than the last. Wakefulness slowly gave way to something quieter, something less defined. Here, the same shift is already happening. Awareness may feel distant now, as though it's watching from far away. Sounds lose their sharpness. Sensations blur at the edges. The mind no longer reaches for clarity. It settles for comfort instead. If there's a feeling of sinking, let it happen. If there's a feeling of floating, let that happen too. Both are signs of safety. The nervous system knows when it's allowed to loosen its grip. Medieval nights were patient. They did not rush people into sleep. They simply made room for it. Hours passed without announcement, and rest deepened quietly on its own schedule. You may notice the spaces between breaths growing longer, more natural. There's no effort involved. Each breath arrives when it's ready, and leaves when it's finished. Nothing is forced. Thoughts now are faint, like distant echoes. They no longer carry stories, only impressions. A texture. A warmth. A softness. These impressions don't need interpretation. They are simply part of the drift. The voice continues as a steady presence, but it doesn't ask to be heard clearly. It exists the way a distant fire exists, reassuring without demanding attention. There is nothing to solve. Nothing to prepare for. Nothing to remember. Night is doing what it has always done, creating the conditions for rest. If sleep comes now, it will be quiet and unnoticed. If it comes later, that's fine too. Rest is not measured by moments. It is measured by ease. The night holds you gently. The body settles deeper. And the mind continues its slow, natural release. Everything unfolds exactly as it should, without effort, without decision, without interruption. The night continues in the same quiet way it always has. Nothing dramatic happens. Nothing needs attention. The world outside remains still, and inside, the body becomes heavier in a comfortable, familiar way. This is the kind of heaviness that doesn't trap you. It supports you. It lets you rest without effort. In medieval times, long nights were ordinary. People did not rush through them. Without clocks glowing or screens demanding focus, time moved slowly and without pressure. Hours passed unnoticed. No one felt the need to fill them. Firelight faded. Silence grew. Breathing softened. People rested in layers, sometimes asleep, sometimes awake, sometimes somewhere in between. This middle state was not considered a problem. It was simply part of the night. You are in that same state now. There is no task waiting. No decision approaching. No reason to stay alert. The body understands this immediately. Muscles loosen gradually, not all at once. The shoulders relax. The hands stop holding tension. The face settles into its natural, resting shape. Breathing becomes slower on its own. You don't need to guide it. You don't need to change it. The mind follows the body's lead. Thoughts lose urgency. They stop forming connections. Instead of stories, there are fragments. Instead of plans, there are impressions. A vague memory might appear, then fade. A word might surface, then dissolve. Nothing needs to be finished. Medieval homes were quiet at this hour. No movement. No voices. Just the occasional sound of wood settling or fabric shifting. Familiar noises. Predictable sounds. Reassuring in their consistency. The night did not ask for productivity. It offered rest instead. Here, now, that offer remains open. The rhythm of the voice stays even. The pace stays slow. There are no surprises. This is intentional. Surprise wakes the mind. Predictability lets it drift. If awareness fades for a moment, that's fine. If it returns briefly, that's fine too. There is no wrong way to rest. The space around you feels softer now, less defined. Edges blur. Time stretches. The sense of before and after becomes less important. Only this moment remains. In earlier centuries, people trusted their bodies more than their thoughts. When the body wanted to rest, it rested. When it woke briefly, it waited calmly until sleep returned. There was no anxiety about missing sleep. No pressure to stay unconscious. Rest happened naturally. Your body remembers this older rhythm. Even if sleep hasn't fully arrived yet, rest already has. The voice continues quietly, existing more as background than instruction. Words are no longer meant to be held on to. They're meant to pass by, like distant footsteps moving away. Breathing remains steady. The heartbeat is calm. Nothing accelerates. The night moves forward, unnoticed. Minutes drift into longer stretches of time. These stretches don't need names. They don't need markers. They simply exist. You may notice a sense of floating. Or sinking. Or nothing at all. All of these are signs of ease. Medieval nights were generous with this ease. They offered long periods where nothing happened, and nothing was expected. The mind slowly learned that stillness was safe. That lesson remains. The body relaxes deeper without effort. The nervous system quiets. Alertness loosens its hold. If sleep arrives now, it will be gentle and unannounced. If it arrives later, it will be the same. There is no need to look for it. The voice continues at the same pace. The night remains open. Rest settles quietly, doing its work in the background. Nothing more is required. The night remains steady. Nothing shifts suddenly. Nothing asks for attention. Breathing continues without effort, rising and falling in a quiet, reliable rhythm. The body feels settled into the surface beneath it, supported completely, with no need to adjust or correct anything. In medieval villages, this hour belonged to stillness. The fires had burned low. Tools rested where they were placed. Even animals had gone quiet, curled into familiar shapes, conserving warmth and energy. There was no sense of urgency tied to the morning. Tomorrow would come whether or not anyone worried about it. Fields would still exist. Stone walls would still stand. Work would wait. That certainty allowed rest to deepen. The mind, when left alone, follows patterns older than thought. It begins to wander slowly, not toward ideas, but toward sensations. The weight of the body. The calm temperature of the air. The absence of movement. This wandering has no destination. A thought might begin and then stop halfway through. A sentence may form without an ending. This is not interruption. It is release. In earlier centuries, people often woke briefly during the night, not with alarm, but with calm awareness. They might adjust a blanket, listen to the quiet, then drift back into rest without concern. Wakefulness did not mean failure. Sleep was not a task. It was a state that arrived when it was ready. You are allowed to be exactly where you are right now. Aware or unaware. Listening or drifting. Present or fading. All are acceptable. The voice continues, soft and consistent, like distant rain against stone. Time stretches gently. Seconds no longer count themselves. Minutes loosen their edges. There is nowhere else to be. The body becomes heavier, not uncomfortably, but securely. Like something settling into its natural position after being held upright for too long. Shoulders soften further. The jaw loosens. The tongue rests easily. These changes happen quietly, without instruction. Medieval nights were long by modern standards. Without artificial light, darkness arrived fully and stayed. People adapted. Their sense of rest expanded to match the night's length. They slept, woke, rested, dreamed, drifted. No one tried to control it. The nervous system learned patience. That patience is still available. Thoughts slow not because they are forced to, but because there is no reason for them to rush. There is nothing to solve. Nothing to remember urgently. If a memory appears, it does so faintly, like something seen through fog. It does not demand reaction. It fades on its own. The voice does not rise or fall. There is no emphasis. No climax. This steadiness is intentional. It gives the mind permission to stop tracking meaning. Language becomes background sound. Meaning dissolves. Rest deepens. In old stone houses, the night air cooled gradually. Walls released the warmth they had stored during the day. People felt this shift and settled more deeply into stillness. The body responds similarly now. Internal temperature lowers slightly. Heart rate eases. Nothing needs to be done. Sleep, when it comes, does not announce itself. It slips in quietly when the mind stops watching the doorway. You do not need to look for it. Even this moment, awake and calm, is already restorative. The voice remains present, giving the mind something simple to drift beside, like a slow-moving river that never changes course. Words pass. Sounds fade. Awareness loosens. If sleep arrives, it will not interrupt anything. If awareness lingers, it will not disturb rest. Both states are gentle. The night continues to hold everything without effort. Nothing more is required. And if someone knocks on the door mid-bite, you don't stop chewing. You just sigh, wipe your hands on your apron, and get back to work. Because hunger waits, but iron doesn't. The forge doesn't care that you haven't swallowed yet. The forge cares that the fire is hot and the metal is ready. You eat when you can, not when you're supposed to. Meals are interruptions, not events. Bread goes stale while you're reheating a hinge. Soup gets cold while you're hammering out rivets. If you're lucky, someone remembers to bring you food. If you're not, you remember later, when your hands start shaking slightly and your stomach feels like it's folding in on itself. Water helps. Sometimes. The problem is, water is heavy, and trips to the well cost time. Time means fewer nails made, fewer tools finished, fewer coins earned. So you ration. Small sips. Just enough to keep moving. Just enough to not faint face first into the forge, which your father once saw happen to a man 3 villages over. Nobody likes to talk about that story, especially near open flames. At night, when the forge finally cools and the fire dies down into glowing embers, your body doesn't relax immediately. It doesn't know how. Your muscles stay tight, like the day is going to jump back at you any second. You lie down on a straw mattress that smells faintly of soot and old sweat, and you stare into the dark. Sleep comes in pieces. You drift off for a moment, then jerk awake because your arm twitched like it was swinging a hammer. Sometimes you dream you're still working, still striking, still missing the angle and hearing your father sigh behind you. Sometimes you dream the forge has swallowed you whole and you're stuck inside it, surrounded by fire that never quite burns you, but never lets you rest either. Your ears ring even in silence. The clang echoes in your head long after the anvil stops. If the night is too quiet, it feels wrong. Like something is missing. You almost miss the noise, because at least the noise means things are still functioning. Morning always comes too fast. The sky lightens. The birds start up. Your back protests as you sit up, every joint filing a complaint. But you don't negotiate with pain. You acknowledge it and move anyway. Pain is background noise now. Something that lives with you, not something to be fixed. You splash water on your face if there's any left, pull on the same clothes you wore yesterday, and step back into the forge. It's waiting. It always is. As the years pass, your role shifts slightly. You're no longer the smallest pair of hands in the room. New apprentices arrive, awkward, nervous, too clean. You recognize yourself in them immediately. The way they flinch at the heat. The way their grip is too careful. Too afraid. You bark at them, not because you're cruel, but because that's how you were taught. Because gentleness doesn't travel well in the forge. Because metal doesn't respond to kindness. It responds to force, repetition, and patience. Mostly repetition. You correct their stance. You yell when they miss. You grunt approval when they don't ruin things. You watch their hands blister and harden. You don't intervene unless they're about to die. Everything else is a lesson. Your father gets older. He moves slower. His back bends further. His temper softens, strangely, as his body fails him. One day you realize you're the one everyone looks to now. The villagers direct their questions at you. The orders come to you. The forge is yours, not officially, not ceremonially, but practically. This realization does not come with celebration. It comes with more responsibility. More pressure. More nights worrying whether you'll have enough coal for the week, whether that cracked anvil edge can last another winter, whether the tax collector will show up when you're already short. The world doesn't reward you for surviving this long. It just asks more of you. Your hands lose flexibility. Your fingers don't straighten fully anymore. They rest permanently curled, shaped by years of gripping iron and tools. Fine movements become harder. You adjust, using leverage instead of finesse. Your lungs ache on cold mornings. Smoke feels heavier now, like it's pressing back. You cough longer, deeper. You spit black into the dirt and stamp it out without looking. You've outlived men who went to war. You've outlasted farmers who starved in bad harvests. You don't feel lucky. You feel used. But then there are moments. Rare ones. A blade balances perfectly. A hinge swings smooth and silent. A tool fits exactly where it should. In those moments, there's no pain. No smoke. No hunger. Just control. You made this. It's solid. It works. It will last. Those moments don't last long, but they're enough. As age creeps in, your pace slows whether you like it or not. The forge demands the same output. Your body disagrees. You compensate with experience. Better angles. Fewer wasted heats. More efficient strikes. You don't swing as hard anymore. You swing smarter. The apprentices notice. They think it's wisdom. It's partly that. It's mostly necessity. Your sleep becomes lighter. You wake more often. Sometimes to pain. Sometimes to nothing at all. You sit up in the dark, listening to the quiet forge, and realize your entire life has been defined by this place. If you leave, who are you? You don't have land. You don't have rank. You have skills that only matter here. In this rhythm. In this heat. So you stay. The seasons change around the forge. Summer makes the fire unbearable. Winter makes the tools brittle and your joints stiff. Spring brings more work. Fall brings more repairs. Time passes without ceremony. One day, you notice your apprentice correcting another newer one. Using your words. Your tone. Your gestures. The cycle continues without asking your permission. This doesn't comfort you. It just feels inevitable. Your father dies quietly. Not in the forge, but close enough. The village attends the burial. They nod to you. Some offer condolences. Most mention how reliable he was. They say the same about you. Reliable. It's not an insult. It's not praise either. It's a statement of function. You keep working. Your body wears down further. You drop tools more often. You forget small things. You need help lifting larger pieces. You hate this part more than the pain. At some point, you become the background. The apprentices do most of the work. You supervise. You correct. You sit more than you used to. The forge still smells the same. The fire still roars. The anvil still rings. But the sound feels further away now. You've become part of the scenery. And one evening, the fire dies down, and you don't bother to stoke it again. You sit. You listen. You breathe smoke one last time without noticing. The forge survives you. It always does. The night settles back into its familiar shape, and the forge grows quiet again, though it never truly sleeps. Even when the fire is low, the place holds warmth, the kind that clings to stone and memory long after the last spark fades. You sit where you've sat 1,000 times before, on a rough bench smoothed by years of restless hands. The anvil looms nearby, dark and patient. It has outlived men before you, and it will do so again. Objects like this don't rush. They wait. Your breathing is slower now. Deeper. Each breath carries a faint taste of ash, the same taste you've known your entire life. It's so familiar that clean air feels incomplete without it. Outside, the village rests. Doors closed. Animals quiet. Somewhere, someone laughs softly, then stops. The sound doesn't reach you fully, only the idea of it does. You've spent so many nights listening to the forge that other sounds come muffled, distant, unimportant. You think back, not sharply, not emotionally, just passively. Memories drift in like smoke. The first hammer you ever held. Too heavy. The handle slick with sweat. Your father's shadow moving behind you, correcting your grip without a word. The sting in your hands. The pride when the iron finally bent the right way. The first serious burn. The kind that leaves a scar. The way everyone nodded afterward, as if to say, yes, now you're really one of us. Scars were currency here. Proof of time served. You shift slightly, feeling the protest in your knees, your spine. The bench creaks. Everything creaks now. Wood, leather, bone. Sounds you once ignored have grown louder with age. The forge hasn't changed much, though. The same soot-stained walls. The same tools, some repaired, some replaced, all familiar. You could navigate this space blind, guided only by memory and instinct. And maybe you already are. There was a time when you thought of leaving. Briefly. Not seriously. Maybe when you were young and strong enough to imagine alternatives. But trades like this don't travel well. Your skills belong to this fire, this anvil, this ground. You don't resent it. Resentment takes energy. Acceptance is quieter. The apprentices handle things now. You hear them sometimes. Their voices are too loud, their movements too quick. They haven't learned economy yet. Everything is force. Everything is effort. They'll learn. Or they won't. The forge sorts that out on its own. You cough lightly, more habit than necessity. The sound echoes strangely in the quiet. In the medieval world, few people reached old age without paying dearly for it. You paid in increments. Burn by burn. Ache by ache. Breath by breath. There was no single moment when your body failed. Just a gradual negotiation with time that you slowly began to lose. You remember customers more than people. Requests blend together. 1,000 hinges. 1,000 nails. 1,000 variations of could you just. Faces blur. Iron doesn't. Iron remembers every strike. That's something you always liked. The honesty of it. You hit it wrong, it shows. The quiet stays. It doesn't rush away or fill itself with meaning. It simply exists, spreading slowly through the forge like cooling metal. The kind of silence that isn't empty, just unoccupied. You remain where you are. Sitting. Breathing. Letting the warmth fade at its own pace. No one is calling your name. No one is waiting for an answer. That alone feels unfamiliar, almost unsettling, but not unpleasant. The bench beneath you holds steady. It has supported your weight for years. Long enough that it feels like part of the room, not furniture, just another surface shaped by repetition. Smooth in some places. Splintered in others. Nothing ornamental. Nothing wasted. Time stretches again, the way it always does at night. In villages like this, darkness was not an interruption. It was a condition. Something everyone adjusted to. Work ended not because it was finished, but because light ran out. You learned to respect that boundary early. Now you let it take its place. The forge smells different when it's cooling. Less sharp. Less aggressive. The iron scent settles back into the walls, into the floor, into your clothes. It's gentle now, almost faint. Your breathing syncs with the quiet. Long inhalations. Slow exhalations. No resistance. No effort. Just continuation. You notice small things you once ignored. The way the floor dips slightly near the anvil from centuries of footsteps. The hairline crack in the stone wall that you meant to fix once but never did. It never mattered. Some things last even when unattended. Your mind drifts, not to events, but to patterns. Repetition without drama. Days stacked on days. Years folding into each other until they lose their edges. It's hard to say where one ended and another began. Life at the forge was never measured in milestones. It was measured in output. In work completed. In tools repaired. In fires lit and extinguished. You lose track of how long you've been sitting. That's fine. Time no longer needs tracking. In the medieval world, aging was not a concept people planned for. It just happened. Quietly. Without ceremony. One day you were strong enough to lift anything. Another day you weren't. No announcement. No adjustment period. You adapted like you always had. Around you, the forge continues to exist whether you're moving or not. It doesn't demand anything. It never did. That demand came from people, from necessity, from hunger. Right now, none of that is present. The night remains generous. You listen to the distant sounds of the village settling further. A door closing. A loose shutter tapping once, then stopping. Somewhere far off, a dog shifts in its sleep. All ordinary sounds. All unimportant. Your eyelids feel heavier, though sleep isn't a destination you're aiming for. If it comes, it comes. If not, sitting is enough. You think of how many people passed through this space. Customers, apprentices, family. Most of them gone now, one way or another. The forge absorbed their presence without comment. It will do the same with yours. That thought doesn't feel sad. Just accurate. Accuracy was always something you appreciated. You adjust your position slightly, careful not to strain anything. The movement is slow, deliberate. Everything is deliberate now. Nothing is rushed. The embers give off a final, low glow, barely lighting the room. Shapes soften. Details dissolve. The forge becomes suggestion more than structure. Even the anvil fades into shadow. The quiet stretches further, uninterrupted, uninterested in clocks or schedules. The night continues whether you track it or not. And in that continuation, there is rest. Not earned. Not deserved. Just present. The world outside keeps turning. Here, nothing needs to move anymore. The stillness remains unbroken. It settles deeper now, no longer just around you, but through you. The kind of quiet that doesn't wait for permission. It simply takes its place, filling everything that used to be occupied by effort. The air cools another fraction. Not enough to chill, just enough to be noticed. Stone releases warmth slowly, reluctantly, like it's remembering the hundreds of nights it has done this before. You stay seated. Standing would require intention. Sitting does not. In the old days, people believed that places remembered. That walls absorbed voices, that floors stored footsteps, that fire left echoes behind. Sitting here long enough, you almost believe it. The forge feels layered, thick with years that never left. You don't think about the future. There was never much use for that. Tomorrow will ask what it always asks. Work, if you are able. Rest, if you are not. Someone else can carry the hammer when your hands no longer do. That transition has already begun. Your shoulders slump slightly, not from fatigue, but from release. For the first time in a long while, nothing is pulling them upward. Nothing needs lifting. Nothing needs shaping. The mind grows quieter when the body stops bracing. Thoughts slow into fragments. Sensations blur. The line between listening and drifting thins. You notice your breathing again, not deliberately, just because it's there. Each breath sounds softer than the last. The forge seems to recede with every exhale. Outside, the night deepens. The sky turns darker shades you don't bother naming. Stars exist whether you look at them or not. You remember once being young enough to notice the stars. That memory fades without finishing. Time moves differently now. It pools instead of flowing. Minutes spread out, thin and wide, until they lose meaning. You feel the weight of your hands resting on your legs. They're heavier than they used to be. Not with effort, just with history. Tools were always honest. People less so. The forge remains neutral. A small sound catches your attention briefly, the distant crack of cooling metal somewhere in the room. A final adjustment. A last settling. Even iron knows when to stop. That sound dissolves back into silence. Your eyelids lower slightly, not closing fully, just enough to soften the edges of the room. Shadows merge. Corners disappear. Nothing sharp remains. In medieval life, endings rarely announced themselves. They arrived gradually, disguised as ordinary evenings, ordinary pauses. You only realized later that something had quietly changed. This feels like one of those moments. Not dramatic. Not final. Just different. The bench supports you without complaint. The air stays calm. The world continues. And for now, that is enough. The quiet holds. Nothing begins. Nothing ends. The night simply stays, the quiet does not loosen its grip. If anything, it grows more settled, more confident, as though it has decided it belongs here and always has. The kind of silence that doesn't feel temporary. It feels structural. Your breathing continues, steady and unremarkable. No thought accompanies it now. Inhale happens. Exhale follows. The body remembers how to do this without instruction. The forge is almost entirely dark. Not black, just indistinct. Shapes soften into suggestion. The walls are no longer walls so much as boundaries you trust without seeing. This is how night was once understood, not as absence, but as a different state of being. Long before clocks ruled attention, people existed like this for hours. Sitting. Thinking nothing in particular. Letting thoughts rise and fall without grabbing onto them. No screens. No alarms. Just presence thinning into rest. You feel that same thinning now. Your posture shifts imperceptibly, finding a position that requires the least effort to maintain. The spine settles. The neck relaxes. The jaw hangs slightly open without resistance. No one is watching. No role needs to be performed. The forge no longer feels like a workplace. It feels like a shelter. Something neutral that does not judge activity or stillness. It accepts both equally. Memories try to surface again but find no urgency. They fade before forming images. Names disappear halfway through recalling them. Faces dissolve into indistinguishable outlines. This isn't loss. It's prioritization. The mind is conserving energy, letting go of anything that doesn't serve immediate comfort. A distant draft passes through the room, barely noticeable. Cool air brushes your skin, then leaves. The body registers it and decides it isn't important. Nothing requires reaction. In past centuries, this was the hour believed to belong to no one. Not work. Not prayer. Not sleep. Just a pause between purposes. A space where existence continued without justification. You exist in that space now. The bench beneath you feels solid and unchanging. If you were to fall asleep here, it would hold you just the same. If you stayed awake until morning, it would not care. There is relief in that indifference. The world outside the forge moves further away, not geographically, but mentally. Responsibilities grow abstract. Obligations lose weight. Even identity feels less defined. You are not the blacksmith right now. Not the apprentice. Not the worker. Just a presence occupying a place. The darkness deepens another shade. Your eyes stop attempting to adjust. Vision is no longer useful. Other senses follow suit, one by one, quieting themselves. Sound thins. Touch fades. Thought slows. The body enters a state it recognizes from long ago, before effort, before intention, before the need to respond. Something primitive. Something safe. You might drift. You might not. Either way, nothing is disturbed. The night stretches on, vast and unconcerned. It does not push you toward sleep, and it does not pull you back toward waking. It simply allows. And so you remain. Breathing. Resting. Unrequired. The forge stays dark. The world waits without impatience. Nothing changes, and nothing needs to. The darkness holds steady. It does not thicken or retreat. It simply remains, the way deep water does when undisturbed. Your awareness drifts within it, not sinking, not swimming, just suspended. Breathing continues at the same unhurried pace. Each breath completes itself fully, without correction. The body no longer checks in with the mind. They operate independently now, each trusting the other to manage. The forge exists mostly as memory at this point. Its outline lingers only because it always has. Even without sight, you know where everything is. The anvil to the left. The bench beneath you. The door somewhere beyond the darkness. Familiarity replaces vision. There is comfort in not needing to verify anything. In the long nights of the past, people often rested like this between sleeps. They did not name it. They did not study it. It was simply the portion of the night where stillness took precedence over action. You occupy that same portion now. Thoughts appear less frequently. When they do, they are incomplete. A color without a shape. A sensation without a cause. They pass through without asking to be understood. The mind does not resist this. Resistance would require energy, and there is no reason to spend it. Your hands are still where you left them. Fingers slightly curled, relaxed. No tension remains in them. They are no longer tools. Just weight and warmth. The embers are long gone now. Whatever faint light once existed has dissolved entirely. The forge has surrendered fully tonight, and yet, there is no sense of loss. Warmth still clings gently to the stone, to the wood, to the air itself. Heat leaves slowly, politely, as if not wanting to cause disruption. You notice how little you want anything. No hunger. No anticipation. No regret. The absence of wanting is not dull. It is spacious. In medieval life, this quiet space was one of the few moments untouched by hierarchy. Rich or poor, skilled or unskilled, everyone arrived here eventually. Sitting. Lying down. Waiting for nothing in particular. Titles disappeared here. So did urgency. Your awareness floats further back, like a tide withdrawing. The voice, if it can still be called a voice, becomes less distinct. More like texture. More like presence. Language loosens its grip. Sentences shorten. Then fragment. Then stop mattering. What remains is simply experience, unlabeled. The body sinks a little deeper into stillness. Muscles remain loose, not collapsing, just supported. Gravity does what it has always done without being noticed. Time stretches thin again, wide enough to forget counting it. If sleep comes, it will arrive quietly, without ceremony. If it doesn't, this state is enough on its own. There is no hierarchy between them. The night does not rank experiences. It allows. Outside, the sky continues its slow turn. Stars shift incrementally. Dawn is far away and irrelevant. Here, in this pocket of darkness, nothing presses forward. Nothing calls you back. Nothing demands improvement. You remain. Breathing. Existing. Held gently by a night that has seen this countless times before, and will see it countless times again, without comment, without judgment, without end. The stillness does not end. It subtly deepens, not by becoming heavier, but by becoming easier to stay inside. Like sinking into warm water where you no longer notice the temperature because it matches you perfectly. Breath continues, steady and unremarkable. In, then out, not guided, not timed. The body remembers how to do this without help. It always has. Awareness drifts again, not forward, not backward, just outward. As if the edges of you have softened. As if the boundary between where you end and the space around you has stopped needing enforcement. The forge, if it can still be called that, is no longer a place of work. It is simply a shelter that has finished its purpose for the night. Tools rest where they were last set down. They feel patient. Metal has no anxiety about tomorrow. Neither do you. Long before clocks ruled sleep, nights were broken into pieces like this. First sleep. Waking stillness. Second sleep. No panic about being awake. No glowing rectangles insisting something was wrong. People lay listening. To wind through cracks in wood. To distant animals. To the subtle creak of a building relaxing as it cooled. You listen too, even if there is nothing specific to hear. Silence is not empty. It is layered. Thick with small unnoticed sounds. Your hearing sharpens gently, without effort. Somewhere far away, perhaps only in memory, there is the echo of movement. A footstep long past. A voice that once existed and no longer needs to. The mind doesn't chase it. Thoughts now arrive like ash falling after a fire has burned out. Soft. Weightless. Gone before they land. A moment stretches. Then another. Time here does not stack. It spreads. You may notice a sense of distance from yourself now. Not separation, just perspective. As if you are observing the state you're in without feeling the need to name it. The body feels safe enough to let go further. Shoulders settle another degree downward. Jaw loosens, tongue resting where it naturally wants to. The space behind your eyes feels wider, quieter. In medieval nights, this was when stories were remembered rather than told. When the mind replayed fragments of experience without storyline. A color from a childhood long erased. The feeling of warmth near a hearth. The sound of rain hitting wood in a steady, honest rhythm. None of these need interpretation. They pass through like clouds that don't expect to be watched. There is no urgency here. No next point to arrive at. Just continuation. Breath after breath. Moment after moment. The body may grow heavier now, or lighter. Both are acceptable. Both mean the same thing, you are not trying. Muscles slacken or hover comfortably. Either way, effort has been withdrawn. The night holds you without gripping. If sleep wants to arrive, it will. If it doesn't, this hovering state is enough. Nothing is missing. The darkness feels familiar now, almost companionable. No longer something you're inside of, but something that's around you, aware of you in the same passive way stone is aware of warmth. Nothing needs your attention. Nothing needs improvement. You are allowed to be unfinished. A long pause settles in. Not silence, presence. And you remain there, effortlessly, as the night continues doing what it has always done. Holding space. Until you no longer notice the holding at all. It feels deeper. As if the night has learned your weight and adjusted itself so you can rest inside it without sinking or floating. Supported without pressure. Breathing continues somewhere below thought. You don't follow it anymore. It follows you. A faint awareness remains, but it has softened its grip. Thoughts still exist, technically, but they arrive incomplete, trailing off before meaning finishes forming. Half sentences. Loose impressions. Unclaimed memories. The body no longer signals. No demand. No complaint. Only presence. This is the place humans used to visit every night without naming it. The space between sleeping and being gone. In the medieval world, there was no fight against this moment. No frustration. No clock insisting it mattered. People lay here listening to the earth cool, to roofs shifting, to animals rearranging themselves in the dark. They trusted the night to carry them wherever it was going. So do you. The sense of time dissolves further. Minutes lose definition. Even the idea of later becomes vague, unnecessary. There is only now, and now is wide enough. Your mind stops rehearsing the future. Stops cataloging the past. What remains is simple awareness, quiet, neutral, unbothered. If a thought appears, it does not hook. It drifts. Like smoke that forgets it was once fire. There is a subtle heaviness now, not uncomfortable, just grounding. As though gravity has been turned down enough to notice it again, gently pressing you into where you are. The edges of your body blur. Hands no longer insist on being hands. Feet forget their shape. The line between skin and air softens. Nothing is holding you up. Nothing is pulling you down. You exist in balance that a long stillness stretches, one that would feel impossible in daylight. Here, it is natural. Expected. The kind of stillness that animals understand instinctively. The kind infants drift in before language arrives. If sleep comes, it will come quietly. No drop. No fall. Just a gradual absence of noticing. And if sleep does not come yet, that is fine too. This state repairs more than most rest ever does. The nervous system unwinds thread by thread. Signals that once kept you alert begin standing down. Old survival alarms, no longer needed, go silent one by one. The night does not rush this process. It has done this for thousands of years. You are simply another body allowed to loosen within it. Another consciousness dimming its lights. Eventually, awareness grows thinner, not gone, just transparent. Like glass you forget you're looking through. Sounds, if they exist, feel far away. Thoughts lose weight. And somewhere, without any announcement, without effort, you begin to slip beyond observation altogether. Remaining only as warmth. As stillness. As rest. And the night continues on your behalf, the stillness remains. Not because anything is holding it in place, but because nothing is disturbing it. You are no longer waiting for the next moment. There is no anticipation. Time has thinned to something barely there, like a memory of movement rather than movement itself. Breath moves somewhere far beneath awareness now. The body continues its quiet maintenance without needing you to supervise. Heartbeat steady. Muscles slack. Weight distributed evenly, as if the surface beneath you has learned exactly how to receive you. There is a faint sense of drifting, not forward, not downward, but away from effort. Thoughts attempt to form occasionally, but they are incomplete things. They dissolve halfway through, forgetting why they appeared. No frustration follows. No correction. The mind simply lets them go. This is not sleep yet. This is the door before sleep. In older nights, long before artificial light claimed the dark, this space was familiar. People slipped into it naturally. No instructions. No resistance. Just the understanding that rest did not require unconsciousness right away. Sometimes the body rests first. Sometimes the mind does. Sometimes both agree at once. Tonight, there is no need to decide. Your awareness spreads thin, like mist settling over a field. Nothing sharp remains. Everything is rounded, softened. Even sensations that once demanded attention, an itch, a twitch, a dull ache, lose their urgency. They register dimly, then fade, as if realizing no response is required. The darkness feels full now. Not crowded, complete. A sense of safety hums quietly underneath everything. Ancient. Bodily. The kind that doesn't come from logic, but from the absence of threat. The mind stops scanning. The body stops bracing. You are allowed to be unguarded here. If memories appear, they do so without context. A sound. A color. The shape of a place you once knew, stripped of its story. They pass without hooking into emotion. Nothing asks to be understood. Nothing asks to be remembered. Another long pause. Then another. Awareness grows softer still, like a candle turned low enough that shadows disappear. There is less distinction now, between inside and outside, between thinking and not thinking. You may notice gaps. Moments where nothing is perceived at all. These gaps lengthen naturally, without being forced. Each one feels normal. Expected. The body settles even further, sinking into a state deeper than rest but gentler than sleep. The kind of rest that does not feel like doing anything at all. If sleep arrives here, it will feel seamless. No threshold. No awareness of crossing. Just one moment present. And the next one not needing to be noticed. And if awareness lingers, quiet, dim, almost weightless, then that is fine too. This state restores in its own way. It rewires without instruction. Nothing is required of you. Not focus. Not attention. Not letting go. Even letting go is unnecessary now. The night continues, wide and patient. And you remain within it. Resting. Loosening. Fading gently between breaths. Until awareness itself grows so thin. It no longer needs a name. The quiet does not change. It doesn't need to. It simply remains, wide and accommodating, like a landscape at night that doesn't react to being observed. You are no longer a visitor here. You fit. Awareness now feels distant, as if you're listening from far inside yourself. Thoughts have almost completely stopped trying to form. When they do, they are soft impressions without language, too vague to grab, too gentle to matter. Breathing drifts in its own rhythm. Sometimes shallow. Sometimes deep. You don't follow it. You don't correct it. It happens the way waves happen on a lake that no one is watching. The body has given up its usual commentary. No scanning. No checking. No subtle tightening in preparation for something later. Muscles rest because there is nothing to prepare for. The night has removed expectations. You may sense brief lapses now, short spans where awareness simply isn't there. Not blackness. Not sleep exactly. Just absence. Then awareness returns, faintly, without concern. This has happened many times before in your life. You simply didn't notice. In ancient homes, this was when the world felt furthest away. Fires reduced to embers. Villages quiet. Even animals resting in intervals. The earth itself slowing slightly, as if exhaling. You're aligned with that rhythm now. Nothing presses on you. Nothing pulls. The mind no longer organizes experience into meaning. Sensations, if they appear, register as neutral signals, stripped of story. Warmth is just warmth. Darkness is just darkness. Stillness is just stillness, there is no you managing any of it. Awareness thins further, like fog dispersing. Edges blur. The sense of self becomes optional. And in that optional space, rest deepens effortlessly. If sleep takes you here, you won't notice the moment it happens. There will be no marker, no transition, just a quiet absence of noticing followed by nothing at all. The quiet stretches on, unbroken. Not in a way that feels long. In a way that feels wide. As though the night itself has opened more space, gently expanding so nothing feels close, sharp, or pressing anymore. You are suspended inside it without effort. Awareness has dimmed to a low glow now. Not alert. Not asleep. Just enough to exist. Breathing continues somewhere far away. You do not notice its beginning or its end, only the soft idea that it is happening. The body has settled into a position it no longer questions. Weight is evenly distributed. No muscle is waiting to be told what comes next. Everything that needed to release has already done so. There is a sense of depth beneath you, support without firmness, like resting on something ancient and unmoving. The kind of support that doesn't announce itself. Thoughts no longer line up. They don't form sentences. If anything appears at all, it's more like texture than content. A vague sense of warmth. The memory of darkness. The absence of urgency. Nothing to solve. Nothing to review. Nothing to prepare for. Time has stopped behaving like time. Seconds don't pass. Minutes don't accumulate. There is only this, and this does not move. You may notice longer blank spaces now. Entire stretches where nothing registers. No thought. No sensation. No awareness of awareness. These gaps feel natural. Comfortable. When awareness returns, it does so quietly, without surprise, like resurfacing without realizing you went under. The mind no longer checks for sleep. The body no longer waits for permission to rest deeper. Both understand where they are, both understand where they are. This is the state where repair happens silently. Where old tension loosens without instruction. Where the nervous system remembers what calm felt like before it learned to be vigilant. The darkness feels complete. Not empty, finished. You are safe enough here to disappear for a while. Breathing drifts. The heartbeat hums quietly, steady and unbothered. Even identity feels faint now, like a name you don't need to say because no one is asking. The sense of me softens into simple presence. Then presence thins. Then even that begins to fade. If sleep comes, it will not feel like falling. It will feel like forgetting there was anything to notice. And if sleep delays, this space remains, unchanging, supportive, endlessly patient. The night does not rush outcomes. It simply holds. So you remain here, barely defined, resting without effort. Slipping gently in and out of awareness. Carried by the dark itself. As it continues, quietly, doing all the work for you, the dark does not respond. It doesn't need to. It has already made room for you. Awareness now is almost transparent, present, but barely. Like the faint outline of something once solid, now softened until it no longer presses against itself. You exist without effort, without intention. Breathing moves, slow and dependable, untethered from thought. The body no longer checks for comfort because it has found enough. Not perfect. Just sufficient. And sufficient is all it needs to stop asking. There is no longer a sense of posture. No clear beginning or end of limbs. No urge to adjust or correct. The body has stopped negotiating with gravity. Time feels irrelevant here, not slow, not fast. Simply absent. As though the idea of progression has gently stepped aside and left the room. In this space, even darkness has texture. Not visual, felt. A soft density. A calm weight. Like a blanket you forgot was there because it never shifted. Nothing calls your name. Nothing expects a response. The mind has abandoned the habit of commentary. It no longer narrates what is happening. It no longer explains. It simply rests, wide open and quiet that if a sensation appears, it is distant and fleeting. A warmth that dissolves before becoming anything. A hint of movement that never completes itself. Then nothing again. These empty spaces grow longer now. Not noticeably, just naturally. Awareness flickers, thins, recedes. Returns briefly. Then fades again. Each return softer than the last, as if even consciousness is getting tired of checking in. There is no boundary between one moment and the next. No edges. No threshold. In older times, this was considered sacred, not because it was dramatic, but because it was wordless. A state without story. Without effort. Without self. You are touching that place now. The place before dreams. Before memory. Before the need to observe. The body knows how to fall into this without instructions. It has done so since before language existed. Tonight, it remembers. The night continues. Breath continues. And you continue too. Not as someone doing something. But as something simply being held. Awareness becomes optional. Presence becomes faint. And somewhere in the quiet, without signal or shift, noticing itself begins to dissolve. Leaving only rest. And then not even that. Just the night, uninterrupted, doing what it has always done. Holding you. Until you are no longer aware of being held, the quiet stays exactly as it is. Not frozen. Not waiting. Just steady. Awareness now feels like a distant echo of itself, something that once checked in often, now doing so only out of habit, and even that habit is fading. Breath moves, barely perceived. Sometimes you notice it. Sometimes you don't. Both feel the same. The body no longer treats silence as something to fill. There is a gentle sense of sinking, not downward, not anywhere in particular, just away from surface thinking. Like sediment settling in water that is no longer disturbed. No tension remains to unwind. No vigilance left to stand down. The body has reached a depth where effort no longer exists as a concept. Moments pass without record. Awareness blinks out. Returns faintly. Then drifts again. Each return is quieter than the last, less interested in staying. There is no question of when sleep will happen. That question has dissolved completely. There is no wanting, only allowance. In this state, the mind stops distinguishing between awake and asleep. Those are daytime words. Here, they don't apply. You are resting in a place that is beneath both. Thought no longer has shape. Memory no longer has pull. Identity no longer has weight. There is just a soft continuity, unbroken, unmeasured. The night feels endless in the most comforting way, not long, but sufficient. Like it has already given you everything it was meant to give. If dreams come, they will rise quietly, without announcement. If they don't, that is fine too. Nothing needs to happen for rest to be complete. Awareness thins again. Longer gaps now, wide, empty stretches where nothing is noticed at all. These spaces are effortless. Natural. When awareness briefly reappears, it does so without surprise or concern, like a reflex that is slowly learning it isn't needed anymore. The body is deeply settled. Safe enough to disappear. Supported enough to let go. And the night continues on your behalf. Patient, silent, unchanged. Holding you through one soft, unrecorded moment after another. Until noticing fades entirely. And even the idea of more gently dissolves into nothing at all. The night does not respond quickly. It never does. It simply allows. There is no shift, no turning point, only a gradual thinning, like fog dispersing without revealing anything new underneath. Awareness drifts in and out so lightly now that it barely counts as presence. More like a ripple that forgot why it formed. The body remains heavy, but not pinned. Weight without pressure. Rest without effort. Muscles stay slack, not because they were told to relax, but because the idea of holding on never returns. Time has stopped behaving like time. Minutes don't stack. Seconds don't move forward. There is only a wide, calm ongoing. Breath happens somewhere far away. You might notice it once. Then forget it again entirely. Even the silence has softened. It's no longer an absence of sound. It's a texture. Thick, padded, forgiving. Thoughts don't come anymore as sentences. If anything stirs at all, it's fragmentary. A color without a name. A sense of warmth without a source. A memory without context that dissolves before recognition. Nothing stays long enough to require attention. The mind has stopped reaching forward. Stopped checking. Stopped narrating. This is the point where effort would feel intrusive. So it doesn't appear. Awareness slips again, longer this time. When it returns, it arrives muted, as if wrapped in layers of cloth. No urgency. No curiosity. Just presence, faint and optional. There's a subtle comfort in realizing that nothing bad happens when awareness disappears. No consequences. No collapse. The body continues perfectly well on its own. Heartbeat steady. Temperature balanced. Position unchanged. Safe. The night carries on doing its quiet work, regulating, restoring, mending things you never consciously touch. If dreams rise later, they will do so gently, without drama or story. Just soft motion, like clouds rearranging themselves. If not, the rest is still complete. You are already deep enough. Awareness thins again. The return takes longer. When it comes back, it barely recognizes itself. There is no thought of asking for more. No desire to continue. Even wanting has gone slack. The body rests inside the night as if the two have agreed on silence. And slowly, so slowly it can't be noticed, the intervals without awareness stretch further apart, dissolving the edges between one and the next. Until there is nothing to mark them. Only the night, continuing quietly. Steady and unhurried. Holding everything in place. While you remain nowhere in particular. Comfortable enough. Not to come back. The night stretches on, not forward, not backward, but outward, like a calm lake widening without effort. Nothing asks for attention. Nothing interrupts. The space you're resting in feels older than clocks, older than names, a place where duration has never mattered. Awareness is now so faint it feels more like background warmth than consciousness. It doesn't observe anymore. It simply exists, lightly, intermittently, as if checking in out of habit rather than need. The body has fully surrendered to gravity. Not sinking, not floating, resting exactly where it belongs. Limbs are heavy in a comfortable way, as though they've finally been given permission to stop reporting in. Muscles that once held tension without being asked have let go completely. Joints sit quietly, no longer speaking up. Even the smallest micro-adjustments have ended. Stillness isn't forced, it's chosen naturally. Breathing continues at a slow, unmeasured rhythm. Sometimes shallow, sometimes deeper, but never demanding notice. It feels distant, like it's happening in another room, reliable, steady, unimportant enough to ignore. Time no longer advances. It doesn't pause either. It dissolves. There is no sense of later or before. The idea of hours becomes abstract, meaningless. Whether minutes pass or entire stretches of night unfold makes no difference here. The body and mind are no longer tracking progress. In this depth, the mind no longer organizes thoughts. There are no beginnings or endings to anything that appears. If a sensation arises, a subtle warmth, a drifting image, a vague sense of movement, it dissolves before it can be named. Nothing anchors long enough to form memory. Thoughts don't arrive as language anymore. They come as impressions, then fade. A flicker of something once familiar. A sense of motion without direction. A color without edges. None of it lingers. There is no urge to follow anything. Silence becomes layered, almost tangible. Not empty, but cushioned. It wraps gently around awareness, softening its edges until even silence stops being noticed. Every system in the body has slipped into autopilot, the ancient, wordless mode that repairs, balances, and restores without supervision. Heartbeat finds its own pace. Temperature settles into comfort. Nerves quiet. The mind steps aside. You are no longer resting in the way people talk about rest. This is deeper than that. This is the kind of rest that happens when effort is forgotten entirely. Awareness fades again, long this time. When it returns, it doesn't fully form. It's more like a shimmer behind closed eyes. There's no identity attached to it. No sense of, I am here. Just presence, light and optional. There is a quiet safety in realizing nothing requires monitoring. Nothing is waiting. Nothing can go wrong in this space. The night has taken over every responsibility. The idea of the body begins to blur. Borders soften. Where you end and where stillness begins becomes indistinct. It doesn't matter. There's no need for definition anymore. If dreams appear, they do so gently, without narrative or urgency. They are more like drifting textures than stories, slow movements, soft transitions, faint impressions that come and go without forming scenes. If they don't appear at all, the absence is just as complete. The mind has fully stopped asking. Stopped checking. Stopped returning out of reflex. Long stretches pass without awareness ever resurfacing. When it does, briefly, it's dimmer than before, weaker, less interested in maintaining itself. Each reappearance feels more distant, as though consciousness itself is growing tired of holding shape. Eventually, even that faint return becomes optional. The body remains unmoving, deeply settled, held by the night in a way that feels practiced, intentional, and kind. Nothing presses in. Nothing pulls away. Just an unbroken field of calm, steady and quiet, carrying you through the remaining hours without announcement, without disruption, without the need to participate. And the night continues, not trying to soothe, not trying to lead, simply being. While awareness thins, stretches, and finally loosens so completely that there is no longer anything to return from. Only rest, deep and sufficient, unmarked by time, quiet enough to last as long as it needs to. The night doesn't change its tone. It doesn't deepen or fade, it simply continues, steady and unbothered, like something that has done this countless times before and knows exactly how much quiet is needed. Awareness, what little of it remains, no longer feels centered. It's diffused. Spread thin across everything instead of sitting behind your eyes. There is no focal point. No observer. Just a loose, dim presence that doesn't care whether it stays or goes. The body is now so still that even the idea of movement feels theoretical. Muscles aren't relaxed anymore, they've passed through relaxation and reached neutrality. No readiness. No resistance. Just a state of being that requires nothing. Breathing continues, but it's no longer rhythmic in any noticeable way. It slows, pauses briefly, resumes. The body decides. The mind stays out of it. Temperature evens out completely. There's no warm or cool, just comfort. The kind that doesn't register because it doesn't contrast with anything else. Long gaps pass. Entire stretches where nothing is noticed, nothing is processed, nothing exists in a form that could be described. These gaps don't feel like loss or absence. They feel like fulfillment, like the mind has finally been allowed to clock out. When awareness drifts back, it does so without identity. There's no you returning, just a faint echo of consciousness brushing the surface and then slipping away again. Each return weaker than the last, less interested in holding shape. Thought is gone now, not suppressed, not quieted, simply irrelevant. There is nothing to think about. Language doesn't form. Memory doesn't pull. Planning doesn't arise. Even imagination has gone slack, no longer generating images or stories. This is the depth where the mind no longer distinguishes between inner and outer. The boundaries soften until they lose meaning entirely. Sound, if it exists, doesn't register as sound. Sensation doesn't register as sensation. Everything blends into a single, steady continuity. The night feels vast here, not because it's long, but because it's unbroken. Nothing interrupts it. Nothing needs to. The body does what bodies are meant to do when they are finally trusted: repair small damage, restore balance, recalibrate systems that run quietly in the background of waking life. Muscles release residual tension you didn't know was there. The nervous system settles into its baseline, unthreatened, unhurried. There is no guarding. No vigilance. No need to be ready. Another long stretch passes. Longer than before. Awareness doesn't return right away. When it finally does, it's barely perceptible, more like the memory of having been aware than awareness itself. And even that fades quickly. At this point, rest is no longer an experience. There is no one left to experience it. The night holds everything effortlessly. If dreams begin to form later, they will do so without effort or narrative, gentle motions, slow transitions, shapes that never quite become stories. If they don't, the stillness remains complete. There is no need for more content, more guidance, more words. Even this sense of continuation will eventually become unnecessary. The intervals without awareness continue to lengthen, stretching wide and quiet, overlapping until they blur together into a single, unmeasured calm. Nothing ends. Nothing begins. Only the night, steady and patient, doing what it does best. Keeping watch. While you rest so deeply that even resting no longer needs to be noticed, the night remains unbroken. Not still in a fragile way. Still in a finished way, as if all necessary movement has already happened and nothing more is required. Awareness no longer rises to the surface fully. When it does appear, it has no interest in forming shape or meaning. It drifts like a faint glow behind closed doors, never asking to be opened. The body feels distant now, not numb, not absent, just no longer something that needs attention. Weight distributes itself evenly, perfectly. There are no pressure points, no urges to adjust. Gravity holds everything exactly where it belongs. Breathing moves so quietly it almost disappears between moments. A soft pause, then another breath arrives on its own. No counting. No awareness of rhythm. Just continuation. Time has completely lost structure. There is no sense of progression. No sense of duration. Whether seconds or hours pass no longer registers. The night does not advance, it exists, and that is enough. Thought does not return as thought anymore. There are no words, no images, no internal dialogue. If anything drifts through the mind at all, it is shapeless, an impression that dissolves before recognition. Nothing stays long enough to be carried forward, silence becomes expansive. It doesn't feel empty. It feels full, supportive, like a vast cushion holding everything in place. The nervous system has stopped signaling. Nothing is being scanned. Nothing is evaluated. The reflex to check in has finally powered down. This is not falling asleep. This is being allowed to disappear for a while. Long spans pass without awareness surfacing at all. When it faintly does, there is no reaction, no relief, no concern, no curiosity. Just a brief glimmer, then it fades again, thinner than before. The boundary between rest and unconsciousness dissolves entirely. There is no moment where one turns into the other. No threshold. No edge. Just a gradual release that never announces itself. The body continues its quiet work uninterrupted, repairing small stresses, easing tiny imbalances, restoring steadiness at a level far beneath sensation or awareness. Nothing dramatic. Nothing noticeable. Just slow, patient maintenance. There is no effort involved in staying here. No need to follow instructions. No need to listen closely. No need to stay present. The night has taken over completely. If something stirs in the distance, a sound, a shift, a faint sensory signal, it passes through without anchoring. It doesn't pull awareness back. It doesn't register as important. You are far below the surface now. Even the idea of more begins to lose meaning. Continuation happens on its own, without narrative or guidance. Words are no longer useful here, but the quiet carries on regardless. Awareness fades again, and this time it does not hurry back. Wide, unmarked stretches unfold, smooth, uninterrupted, calm. There is no sense of self. No sense of body. No sense of place. Only the night, doing what it has always done. Holding, balancing, allowing everything to loosen until nothing needs to be held at all. And in this depth, rest is not something you enter. It is simply where you already are.